Hello everyone, and welcome to Classic Gaming Today, where we take a look at the gaming experiences of the past through the eyes of the present. I am your host Tony, and today is our latest Sounds of the Classics episode. This one is focused on a singular game, Final Fantasy X. We're going to talk about that game and the music and the story in depth in just a couple minutes, but first, as is usual, just a little bit of housekeeping up front. As always, I'm excited to be here. I hope all of you are as well. If you'd like to reach out, let me know how I'm doing, provide feedback, comments, suggestions, or just talk about classic games and technology in general. I would love to hear from you, and there are a few ways you can reach out. I have an X account with the handle @ClassicGamingT. I have an email address, which is classicgamingtoday@gmail.com, and we have our Discord server. The link is in the show notes. Discord is the best way to get in touch with me and the rest of the community around this podcast. We have a ton of fun out on Discord. We do weekly and monthly gaming challenges, prizes, awards, discussions. It is all out there. I highly encourage you all to check it out. I also highly encourage you to check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/ClassicGamingToday. If you want even more Classic Gaming Today goodness, including a Patreon exclusive bi-weekly podcast expansion pack, patreon.com/ClassicGamingToday is where it's at. I'd also like to give a shout out to our Pantheon patrons. They are ISO, Rich Senewal, David Morton, Sam Twardowski, Sean Oliver, and Maximus Marshall, Steve Novoselic, Wendell Jr., Chris Snowden, The Bay 101, Toucan Sam, Christopher Fose, Grayor, and Marek. Thank you guys for supporting the show. Thank you all for supporting the show. Whether you contribute monetarily or simply listen on a regular basis, I truly do appreciate all of the support. Before we start listening to a bunch of music from Final Fantasy X, I thought it'd be a good idea to let you know why we're doing a Sounds of the Classics episode on Final Fantasy X itself. And the simple fact is, sometimes a game is just too big to be confined to a single episode. As many may be aware, we actually had an episode on Final Fantasy X around a couple months ago or so. And at that time, I realized that Final Fantasy X was such a huge game, had such a degree of variety in the music and the story and the battles and everything else that went along with it, that to try to encapsulate all of that into a single episode was probably not going to happen. And while we did have a standalone episode on Final Fantasy X, I always knew that I wanted to re-explore Final Fantasy X from the perspective of its music and its story. And that is exactly what we're going to do today as we repurpose one of our Sounds of the Classics episodes to focus solely on the music and story of Final Fantasy X. Now, this is a little bit different than most of our Sounds of the Classics episodes. Most of the time when we do a Sounds of the Classics, it's focused on a variety of games and what those games mean to me, what are the personal experiences or feelings that come along with each of those games' soundtracks, and really, why did I choose those songs in relation to personal experiences that I may have had over the course of my gaming career. Today's episode is a little bit different because we're not really talking about all of the personal aspects of music in video gaming. We are diving deep into a singular video game to talk about the music and the narrative that goes along with it. So, a couple of words of warning. We will be talking in detail about the story of Final Fantasy X. That means, unlike most of our normal episodes, there will be spoilers included within this particular discussion. So you have been warned. If you haven't played Final Fantasy X yet, and you want to, or you care about having the story spoiled for you, please stop listening now, play the game, come back in 50, 60, 100 and something hours whenever you beat the game, and then we can have our discussion. But this will be filled with spoilers. We will be going through most of the story for Final Fantasy X as we continue our discussion. So just a little bit of a warning right up front. Secondly, I do also want to mention that I am not going to be discussing Final Fantasy X alone, but no, we have ISO with us again. ISO was the sponsor of our Final Fantasy X episode. We spent several hours talking about Final Fantasy X back then. We spent another couple hours talking about it today because, quite frankly, Final Fantasy X is way too big for a single person to cover. So ISO will be joining me throughout the discussion of the game's music as well as its story. I am definitely looking forward to that. Before we get there, though, as we always do, I want to give everybody an opportunity to convey your own feedback, your own comments about Final Fantasy X and the music and story behind the game. We did receive several comments about Final Fantasy X and its music, so without further ado, let's get started. The first one is from Marek, who says, "Despite not being my favorite Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy VIII is my favorite, and I'm comfortable being alone over here on Objectively Correct, even if I can't really say why Island. It is the only of the series where music from it will bring tears to my eyes every time I hear it. There is something haunting about the song Xanarkand, and the fact that Uematsu-san was able to weave the emotion so tightly into the music that it hits in the first 7 notes just amazes me. What also makes this unique is how I actually came to realize just how much my emotions were tied into this music. On July 1st, 2005, I was one of the attendees of the Dear Friends Music from Final Fantasy show in Fort Worth, Texas, which was a part of the first official North American concert tour of music from Final Fantasy being performed by symphonies. I was very excited about the concert, anticipating that specific moment at the end of Liberi Fatali, where the final crescendo crashes down upon silence and then the music swells back in for the final notes, and the in-game intro and logo fades in. That is a very special musical moment for me, similar to the way someone might close their eyes in anticipation when the words, "A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away," shows up on a theater screen. For some, it's a perfect moment in balance. I type all that to set the stage because I went in knowing what the moment I would remember most would be, and I could not have been more wrong. The moment for me that is even more vividly etched in my long-term memory is when those first 7 notes of Xanarkand played, and I went from excited concert goer to weeping mess in literal seconds. Those 7 notes somehow contained within them the 100+ hours of time I had spent with these characters. The laughter, the struggle, the fights, the story. All wrapped into 7 seemingly simple piano notes. The entire original soundtrack is excellent, but the true sign of its quality is how 7 notes can encapsulate the entire experience. Wow, Marek. I have nothing else to say except wow. What an awesome comment. Thank you for sending that one in. We also got some feedback from Merbean, who says, "I always felt like the soundtrack for Final Fantasy X was symbolic of what was going on in Square and video games in general at the time. Even at the time, I thought the team effort approach to the soundtrack was telling. In prior games, even using different styles, Nobuo Uematsu always delivered a strong cohesion to Final Fantasy soundtracks. However, it felt like the premier video games at the time were growing bigger than what one person could completely comprehend development-wise. This feeling was reinforced by the fact that they were developing their MMORPG concurrently with Final Fantasy X. And yes, that is absolutely true. Thank you, Merbean, for that comment, because Final Fantasy X, other than being just a singular Uematsu-driven joint, is really the culmination of 3 different composers who worked on the soundtrack, which is one of the reasons why the soundtrack is as diverse as it is. So thank you, Merbean, for your comment. We also got a comment from FilmKid, who writes, "ISO, terribly sorry, mate, for missing out on this long-awaited conversation, though I know you totally put this plan in motion after Final Fantasy X was snubbed in the Sounds of the Classics Square Enix episode. Look, this was before the era of 3-hour episodes. There was a time crunch, and I'm sorry if Dancing Mad took up half the show, but you know what? No regrets. Surely Xanarkand, Suteki Dane, or even the Hymn of the Faith would have made the list. How about I double down and throw in some X2 with 1,000 words? Are you happy, man?" All kidding aside, the music in 10 is amazing, and I mean Xanarkand. Wow, what a song to kick off the PS2 era of Final Fantasy. Anytime we get to talk about the music from a Final Fantasy, I am here for it. Again, there could be a few more episodes on just the works of Uematsu, Hamauzu, Soken, and the growing team of composers who have worked on the greatest franchise in video games. So, thank you ISO and Tony for the deep dive into Final Fantasy X, and I look forward to the conversation and my eventual playthrough. just literally got to the moment in Final Fantasy VII. If you know, you know. Thank you, Film Kid, for your comment. Yes, by the way, Film Kid is slowly but surely playing his way through all of the Final Fantasies, so he just reached that moment in Final Fantasy VII, which is probably etched in everybody's brains for all eternity. Film Kid, good luck with that. And yes, he also mentions that we are in the era of 3-hour episodes. Not really going to do 3-hour episodes all that often, but looks like they're happening occasionally now, and it always usually happens when ISO is on the call. Interestingly, and this is something that we do have to congratulate ISO for, ISO just recently posted on Discord that he is expecting his second daughter. So congratulations, ISO. And I fear that the amount of time ISO is going to have on his hands to be able to record these 3-hour episodes might be limited in the near future. Regardless, congratulations, ISO. That is amazing news. We also got a comment from Yuzu Soda, who says, "When I hit Final Fantasy X, the audio changed everything for me. Hearing characters speak made the story feel close, even with some uneven delivery, and the music shifted with it. Coming from the PS1 era of mostly sequenced, sample-based tracks and tight storage to the PS2's broader use of recorded audio changed how the narrative landed for me. Even the sequenced cues used higher quality samples on the PlayStation 2, so the instruments felt more real and bridged the gap between synth and live recordings, which made Spira feel lived in. I grew up on Noboru Uematsu. The Final Fantasy 6 through 9 soundtracks are hardwired into my nostalgia and shaped what I think games should sound like. With Masashi Hamauzu and Junya Nakano joining Uematsu on 10, it felt like the familiar expanding in a fresh way. Of particular note is the Travel Agency, which is one of the few tracks I used as an alarm tone in high school that doesn't stress me out by association. Both the Travel Agency and Sight of Spira make me feel the world of Spira. The entire soundtrack is still in heavy rotation for me. Thank you, Yuzu Soda, for your comment. We also had one final comment from the Bay 101, who writes, "I bought a PS2 for the sole purpose of playing Final Fantasy X. This game was amazing. It was the first game I played where the graphics looked realistic. I loved the Polynesian theme and the voice acting, especially Waka. As good as the game itself was overshadowed by the music. Xdeath and I used to play a game where he would play a Final Fantasy song and I would have to at least guess what game it was from. And I was terrible. My favorite song from Final Fantasy X is Sight of Spira. I remember playing Sight of Spira and Besaid Island on repeat as I installed servers for the Internet Archive in San Francisco. Although not a traditional Final Fantasy song, put on Sight of Spira, close your eyes, and be transported to a beach in Hawaii." Thank you very much for your comment, The Bay 101. Thank you all for your feedback. ISO's goal here, he actually posted out on Discord about this, was to try to make this episode even longer than what it otherwise was going to be. He wanted all the comments in the world, and you all delivered. Thank you all for your feedback about Final Fantasy X, and especially thank you all for sharing your personal experiences with the game. With that, we are going to get started actually talking about Final Fantasy X and the music and story that goes along with it. So without further ado, here is our first song. So that first song plays at pretty much the beginning of the game. And if you're like me, you're probably thinking to yourself, this doesn't sound like Final Fantasy at all, because this is a very different take on a Final Fantasy song. Most Final Fantasy songs from the past are really, or have been more either orchestral or a little bit softer, a little bit more fantasy themed. This is just hardcore metal, and it is awesome. ISO, talk to us a little bit about where this is playing, at least the first time you encounter it in the game.
So this starts up. Titus is getting ready for a big game. You sort of, as this opening cinematic opens up, you can see him. I think he's actually sort of, they're actually inflating, or not inflating, but they're filling the Blitzball Irradium full of water. It's this big, cool event when the stadium's getting packed full of people, and this song's blasting away, and then the game starts, and you see Titus playing. He's kicking a goal. He goes flying through the roof, and then he notices all these giant missiles coming towards the arena. And of course, it hits the arena. You know, you've got this really bombastic song going, and then he's hit the deck, and he's found Orin.
So who's Aaron? I will probably talk about him a bunch, but give a little preview.
Well, he's a mysterious man who is, from Titus's recollection, he's known him for a long time. So um, he's unsure of what's happening, and this familiar figure is saying, "Follow me if you want to live," essentially. And that's the start of the game. So, and then we start going into the tutorial.
So we have heavy metal followed by a Terminator saying, "Come with me if you want to live." Is that what you're saying?
I haven't seen the Terminator, so I'm completely.
Oh, geez. Well, we just found the next episode for you to co-star in. Is we'll have to do another Terminator episode at some point, because you got to watch Terminator.
I know it's a big blank spot in my movie catalog.
We were talking about Final Fantasy, not Terminator today, but still, definitely have to watch the movie. So yeah, so that's the beginning of the game, and then this attack is happening, and then of course you've now got to escape, which leads us into our next song, which is the main battle theme from Final Fantasy X.
So after you've had your first battle, we're going to continue through the story, and Orin has become more mysterious again. The world starts shifting, the gravity starts pulling you up, there's a vortex coming towards you. He's reached his hand out, and you're going to trust him? Who knows? You touch this magical void, and sucked away. Everything disappears.
That sound effect came directly from the game, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah, that's right, yeah.
That's right in the game. Okay, yeah, that's what I was
I didn't
thinking.
tell you I'm actually a Foley artist by trade,
Ah,
so
look at that, multi-talented.
plus I can whistle into the mic whenever you want, so
Perfect. That's going to certainly become a useful skill as we go. But
for you
the
to cut stuff out, right, yeah.
yeah. The so the battle song here is probably my favorite battle song in any Final Fantasy game. And when I think about battle songs, especially in RPGs, it's one of those things where I think you take a lot of it for granted because it's a song you're going to hear repeatedly throughout the entire game, because most RPGs, they reuse their main battle theme everywhere. And if it's not a good song, you're going to get sick of it by the time you get to the end of a 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever hour playthrough. But I've got to say that this one in particular, it never got old. This is the kind of song that, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the way the melody came together, just the way it worked. I'm sure it has something to do with also the battle system in the game, which we talked about during the Final Fantasy X exclusive episode. But the battle system in Final Fantasy X, with the sphere grid and the skill allocations and just the way it all plays out, it's just a dynamic system. And this song, for me, never got old as I played the game. And there's tons of battles across the entirety of Final Fantasy X. It never got old. This is legitimately probably my favorite Final Fantasy battle theme, maybe one of my favorite RPG battle themes ever. It's just that good. Do you have a favorite ISO? I know you haven't played every Final Fantasy, but where does this one stack up in terms of, or in comparison to the other Final Fantasies or other RPGs that you might have played?
Well, it's a bit like picking your favorite song as your alarm tone, isn't it? Like, as soon as, like, the random encounter I think the random encounters element of it too is, like, in Final Fantasy VII, I really hated the battle theme because it felt like every time it happens, like, "Oh, no, I really wanted to get back to the story," and it's always, like, the inconvenient timing of it all. But this one's actually really good. It just doesn't get on your nerves as much. I don't know whether it's just it is less MIDI, but yeah, it's just dynamic and it's sort of got that tempo where it's sort of like if you're working your way through a menu, you don't seem to get lost. It sits there so you can still think about it, but it also feels like you've got that sense of urgency. So yeah, no, I really like this one.
Yeah, they did a great job of just, and I know we don't often talk about music theory and things like that with these episodes, but just the way that the melodies and the chords and everything resolve, like the do 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 boom, and then the bass comes in, do do, everything mixes together so well that it's melodically pleasing while still maintaining that sense of conflict that you would want in a battle theme. And for whatever reason, it does it for me. This is the kind of song that I have listened to it outside the game. I taught myself how to play it a bit on the piano as well, just because when I find a song I really, really like, I just want to devour it. This is just a good song. And like you said, with the random encounters and things like that, it has to be a good song. Otherwise you get a little tired of it. But this one, it did not overstay its welcome, even though I played the game for well over 50-ish hours. And I know you played the game for well more than that to do all of the extra content. But this one it doesn't get old. It's a good song. We're going to move on to our next song. Like ISO said, Titus has been whisked away to a brand new land. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Like we were just saying, Titus is now in a brand new land. He doesn't know where the heck he is. He's exploring ruins. He's meeting up with different people. This is certainly a fish out of water story, even though Titus is in fact exploring the water at certain sections of the game and even certain sections around where this is occurring. But it is one of those situations, and this song really does capture that feeling of, I guess, unease. Maybe it's definitely a foreign world. Titus doesn't know what the heck to think. He's looking around, he's experiencing new things, he's trying to learn about his surroundings. I think that this particular song captures that feeling really well, and also kind of speaks of a civilization or a set of situations or just a world that almost feels as though it's in the past. This does not feel modern to me. And I think just based on how the story eventually plays out and what we learn about the story, it kind of plays into the rest of the game and certainly has a spot. This is a very early game area, but it kind of sets the stage for what's about to come, where Titus doesn't know what's going on. He's going to learn throughout his journey what's going on, but he doesn't know right now. He knows that he's somewhere else. He may be sometime else, but he's going to learn about that as he goes. Does that kind of align with your thinking, ISO, about this one, or just kind of what's happening in this early stage of the game?
Yeah, no, that's totally right, and I think this song sort of encapsulates that quite well. It's got that sort of underpinning of like there's a thread, but it's not immediate. Like it's sort of something's happening in the background, and I really like this song because it reminds me a lot of the song Mako Reactor from Final Fantasy VII, which is sort of like that early game part where you're sort of running around doing the anarchy stuff for Avalanche and all that sort of stuff where you're bombing reactors and stuff. But it's got that sort of underpinning of like we're doing something, but the whole story hasn't quite unraveled yet, which I think has been captured quite beautifully in this song.
Yeah, that was a good song too. The Mako Reactor one from Final Fantasy. That's another Final Fantasy that has just a great soundtrack. So many iconic songs come out of that one too. But wow, you know what? I guess you could say that about any Final Fantasy, though. I mean, there's a reason
Pretty
why
much, yeah.
the soundtracks Final Fantasy is so widely esteemed from a musical perspective. It's just they're all good. I can't pick a favorite. Well, I kind of did, Final Fantasy VI. But I'm going to tell you right now, Final Fantasy X is up there. There are so many good songs in this game. So we're in this new world. We get through a couple of areas, and then we wash up on a beach. And then this song plays.
I could listen to that quite literally all day. This song is probably the reason that I picked Final Fantasy X to replay as one of my sponsor episodes. I started playing the first few hours of this game and I was like, oh, is it as good as I remember? This song come on, and it was absolutely clear that this was the game that I was going to sponsor. I started playing this game when I went for a trip for my best friend's wedding, and yeah, this song just absolutely stole the whole trip. Like I was listening to this whole soundtrack after that, and it starts playing as you're sort of going through like this. You're swimming through the said island, which is the island that Titus is washed up on after the last scene, and it's just so beautiful. There's forestry, there's birds flying. You can almost picture it, like you listen to that song, you can sort of feel the remote island vibes. I love it so much.
It's a great song. And the I think from my perspective, the immediate correlation that I have with this song and the game, or I'll say one of the reasons why I personally like this song as well, is that this is the song that's playing when you get introduced to who I consider to be effectively the heart of your party, the heart of the game, Waka. Waka quickly became one of my favorite party members in the entire game. He's funny. He definitely has some preconceived notions about certain groups of characters within the game, specifically the Albed.
You could just say he's a racist.
I could say that. I could, yes, he is.
Yeah.
He is a racist. Yes, that is true. But at the same time, he does go on his own personal journey as we play the game to combat that.
Yeah, it comes full circle, and he finds his way in a piece with that. But yeah, it's an interesting plot point, and I think it is actually quite a good part of the story. Waka, and you putting it, he is the heart of the game.
Yeah, and I honestly didn't expect that. And I don't know why. I mean, it wasn't like I'd ever played the game before. I really didn't have any preconceived notions going into the game. But the more you hang out with Waka, he is the guy. He's kind of like the brother that you always go hang out and grab a drink with after work or on the weekend or something, and you just talk about all sorts of stuff. He's the kind of guy you would hang out with just because he just
go to a blitzball game with him.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Maybe go watch a blitzball tournament or something. But he's just a good guy, it seems, at the end of the day. But you meet Waka early on in the game. He joins your party. I thought it was funny that his weapon of choice is effectively a blitzball, which I don't know would be the most effective weapon in many instances, although it does work really well against flying enemies. And we should probably just talk briefly about that. The whole concept of within combat, it's almost like you have different counters as you build out your party. Different members of your party are good against different enemies. Like Waka is good against flying enemies because he can throw the blitzball at them. Whereas if you try to attack with, say, Titus on a flying enemy, more times than not, you're going to swing and miss because the overall ability to hit a flying creature, I guess, is reduced. The overall accuracy is reduced. I really liked that aspect of the combat in the game. I felt like it added an additional layer of strategy that some games just don't have. I mean, you certainly have games where you have counters and you might pick, say, a fire mage or a fire user to combat an ice enemy. And that's certainly in here too. But I thought that actually having the individual characters be the counters to certain enemy types, I thought that was a novel addition and something that I didn't expect when I started playing the game.
Yeah, it's great, and it's not like Titus is completely useless against flying enemies. It's just it's less effective, so you're better to use the right tool for the right job.
Speak for yourself about Titus. My Titus was pretty useless against flying enemies. But I know your Titus
Maybe
was
Titus
probably
wasn't the great. He probably wasn't the best example, but yeah.
well. Your Titus was. I mean, for anybody who's not aware, as far as how we played the game, I played the game and I pretty much focused on the main story. I did a little bit of side content, but I pretty much focused on the main story. So I had developed my sphere grid enough to be able to get all of the main, what I'll call main skills for all of the characters that I acquired over the course of the playthrough. ISO's playthrough, yours was a little bit different, I think. You had a little bit more experience gathering time, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I started playing it. I was like, I just wanted to 100% it like I wanted to when I was about 15 years old. So I did it, and yeah, it's a lot of a time investment, but Titus becomes useful. I guess that's one thing you can say about it.
I mean, Titus was useful for me. He just wasn't useful against flying enemies. For whatever reason, it was
Yeah.
anytime a flying enemy came about, I would swing with him and maybe I'd hit maybe, I don't know, 30% of the time. But I venture a guess that that's probably a me problem and not a broader game problem. But anyway, so we go through, we have now acquired Waka into our party, and we actually meet another character as we're exploring Besaid Island. We meet the summoner, Yuna. Yuna is a summoner, and we'll talk more about what summoners are as we continue our discussion, but effectively, a summoner is somebody who has been selected to battle Sin. Sin being the big bad guy who originally attacked during the Blitzball tournament that Titus was in early in the game. Now we're in this brand new land, and it turns out that Sin is still an evil menace here. So Yuna is one of the summoners that is working through their own set of trials in order to eventually combat and hopefully defeat Sin. The interesting thing about Sin is that he's actually a cyclic kind of threat, meaning that every several years, how many years was it, ISO? Is it 120? I can't remember the exact number that Sin comes
It
back.
actually changes. So there's been a few, and then the difference between the calms changes based on the wiki. So I think it's about 10 years. I think the longest calm was. So between however hundreds of years, as we go through the story, you'll sort of find out more about the past. But yeah, there's a couple of 100 years since the original Sin. There's different incarnations, and when Sin has been defeated, there's a calm period, which is anywhere between a couple of years and 10 years. So
Okay. So this is the latest period of Sin resurfacing and wreaking havoc across the world. And Yuna is one of the summoners that is trying to go off and combat Sin. Now, in order to do that, she actually has to acquire a number of different, what is in Final Fantasy X called Aeons, which is effectively the same thing as Espers from Final Fantasy VI or summons from other Final Fantasies. It's basically those big creatures, the Ifrits, the Shivas, the Bahamut, that you can call upon in battle that unleash some sort of devastating fury on all of your enemies. As you play the game, Yuna, along with the rest of the party, will be going through a bunch of different trials. They're called the Cloister of Trials. And effectively what you're trying to do is complete these little mini dungeons with puzzles, and you have to use different items at different spots in order to continue to progress. But you play through these trials, and your goal is to eventually unlock or acquire different summons for your own use. The thought being that these summons will be these powerful entities that will help you along your journey and will hopefully allow you to help defeat Sin. So that's who Yuna is. That's why Yuna is here. She is trying to go through. She also has a number of individuals that are going to be helping her. They're known as her guardians. Over the course of the game, pretty much everybody that becomes a party member will eventually become a guardian, Titus included. Everybody we acquire effectively becomes Yuna's guardians as you continue to play the game. So we meet Yuna. We will certainly journey and adventure with Yuna throughout the rest of the game as we continue to go. And as we continue through the game, so once again, this is not meant to be an all-inclusive story look. So fast forwarding just a little bit. After we go through, we have Yuna in our party, we get her first summons, or her first Aeon. We then eventually get to a location where we learn a little bit more about what summoners are truly capable of. And that brings us into our next song.
So as Yuna's pilgrimage progresses, she goes to different temples. So the next one on the trip is Kilika. So on the way there is another Sin attack. The people on the boat traveling with the party, they actually go out of their way to sort of protect the town of Kilika, and in the result, a lot of Kilika is actually killed. So when we sort of get onto the shore, Yuna actually performs ascending. So the last song was called The Sending. And the Sending is sort of like a ritual that is used to sort of send the dead to the next world. And it's a protection method because when people die in this world, they become fiends, which is like the enemies of the Final Fantasy X world. So yeah, this ritual is really important to the story, and that song, you hear the chanting, that's the hum of the faith, and that becomes quite important later in the story as well. But each temple has got its own hum, so I really love that about this game. Like each summon has got their own hum, and if you go through the soundtrack, they've got like Ifrit will be a really bassy, sort of manly sort of voice, and then as you go to the other temples, you'll sort of get a feel for the summon that you're going to get before you've even completed the Cloister of Trials and added that Aeon to your party.
I think that's a really cool feature of the game. Those are the kind of details that make a game feel just well thought out and designed impeccably well. Because it could have been very easy for somebody to say, create a singular song that will play for every single temple so that you know that that's where you're going. You're going into this temple. Just create a single song, and it doesn't matter what Aeon that you're getting or what summon you're trying to get, just play that same song. But they didn't do that here. They actually had the attention to detail to say every single summon, every single Aeon that you get is going to have its own separate song. And like you were just saying, ISO, it's unique and specific and representative of the summon that you're trying to get, which I just thought was an awesome touch.
It's really good too. Like if you actually, I think it's more like it's easier to see in the high def remake, but like the mandalas that are actually on the floors and the walls of the temples have actually got a story to tell, and again are representative of the Aeon that it's actually inside the temple, and you can just sort of read into these mandalas, which are just so fascinating. And I'm pretty sure like there is nothing in this game that hasn't been thought about by the designers. Like they've actually gone like there's a lot of games that probably wouldn't have had a second thought about this sort of stuff, but it all seems to loop back in a little tiny way, and it's not things that are not there for no reason, you know.
That's a crazy level of detail, and I didn't even realize that. I didn't even realize that there was that level of attention to detail with the individual glyphs and mandalas that are within each of the temples actually being something more than just window dressing. That's awesome. I had no idea.
It's really cool detail.
All right, so we've gone through. We'll talk more about what the far plane is later on, but Yuna goes through this sending process, and then we go through a couple of other areas. Certainly, we work through Kilika. We talk a little bit, or we go through another Cloister of Trials. We get our new summons. The next major spot that we get to is our very first Blitzball tournament. And that's what we're going to talk through. We'll talk more about Blitzball in a minute. Like I was mentioning, this plays while you're having your very first Blitzball tournament. Blitzball is one of those sports, or mini games, I should say, within the Final Fantasy universe that for whatever reason, it did not click with me. The song itself is fine, but the act of playing Blitzball, I will readily admit, and I'm just going to say it, I did not play Blitzball at all, other than the one required match that I had to play, which I did soundly lose. ISO, what's your thoughts about Blitzball or this song, which was called Blitz Off, or anything about that? Because I'm going to be honest with you, Blitzball just did not click with me.
Oh mate, it's the funnest mini game of any of the Final Fantasies ever. Do you not agree? It's so
Oh my god,
so decisive, divisive. Sorry, it's like some people absolutely hate it, and other people absolutely love it. I don't know what it is about it. It's like I'm in the camp of love it, but I can totally see why people dislike it. But yeah, it's very decisive, divisive. It's I told this story in the Final Fantasy X episode, I'm pretty sure, but I actually found Final Fantasy X through the Blitzball mini game because I remember going to a friend's house and his brother was playing it in like an upstairs loft. It was so cool, like it was just a cool house and a cool vibe, like. he was just sort of up there, and I'm going, "What are you playing?" Oh, yeah, just blitzball. It's just like a this cool little thing, and it's just like him playing underwater rugby, and I don't know. It's sort of like the collectible element of it too. Like, you can go around and start asking people in the world after the match in the story, and you can recruit people to your team, and they've got different skills and levels and stuff like that, and it's just fantastic. But Tony, you can you do your best ESPN like voice and like do like a little call for Blitz in your head, or
I can try. Let's
yeah, it
see.
would be great.
Let's see. Coming to you live from Luca, we have the latest Blitzball tournament between the Beset RX and the Luca Goers. Going to kick down to the arena. Let's see what happens next.
See, that's beautiful. That's fantastic. I listen to that all day, every day.
Oh man, it is interesting to talk to somebody who really enjoyed the blitzball mechanic. And maybe I didn't give it enough of a chance. I will admit that I played it. I didn't really do all that well the first time with the first tournament, and I knew that there were different people that you could recruit and you could build up your team and you could do all that kind of stuff. I didn't really explore that side of the mechanics. So maybe if I would have taken more time and actually spent more time building up a good team and getting the right players and all that kind of stuff, maybe I would have enjoyed it more than I did. But
You can really get into a rabbit hole. You
oh,
can
I'm
get into
sure.
a massive rabbit hole.
Yeah, I just did not dive down that particular rabbit hole, but it sounds like something that could be interesting. It just, for whatever reason, it did not grab me. But to your point, this is one of those things where some people go totally into it, and other people, I think they kind of gloss over it like I did. Regardless, still a cool addition to the game. I always, and this is just in general with games, I always appreciate when a game or developer or whatever, when they include something that is absolutely unnecessary to the rest of the game. Because at the end of the day, you can play the entire game and not ever worry about blitzball. That's exactly what I did. I played the whole game. I didn't even worry about blitzball. But it's something that has hours upon hours of potential content that you could explore. I love that kind of stuff. I think that that's just awesome when you have a game that has these different optional activities that are as deep and fully thought out as what you have. In Final Fantasy, the series in general, they have a lot of that kind of stuff where there's this side content and you could choose to explore it, you could choose not, but at the end of the day, it's still worthwhile in some capacity. So I do enjoy that kind of stuff.
And it's woven really well into the story, which I think that makes it really good too. Like the whole world of Spira is like you've got this religion, and the religion is almost woven into the Blitzball. Like one of the temples, the main like prophet or like the statue, he was a world famous blitzball player. It's like it's just in there, it's in the story, and it's woven well.
And that's a great point, because it's not just off to the side content. It's side content which is integrated with the broader world. And I think, to your point, it makes it feel like it's more of a valid, real thing as opposed to just a tack on kind of thing. I think there was a lot of thought behind it to do that. So even though I didn't particularly like Blitzball, I did appreciate its inclusion, and I appreciate what the devs went for there. So we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about a character who we referenced earlier, but has been kind of missing up to this point in the story. It is, of course, Aron.
So just as you've either triumphantly won the Blitzball tournament, or in Tony's case, lost the Blitzball tournament, there is a massive attack on the stadium. And guess who's here to save the day again? It's the mysterious man, Oren. He comes and he absolutely decimates the Fiend attack. Once again, showing that he is a total Terminator and kills everything in his way. But he also seems to know a little bit more about this world than he's letting on. There's some connection to him and the world and the past world that Titus is from. It's just so goddamn mysterious at this point. But as we continue along, we sort of move on to the Meehan Hide Road. So our pilgrimage continues. Oren, of course, joins our party because he actually knew Yuna's dad and was part of the pilgrimage that he took. So Yuna's dad was a summoner like before Yuna's time, and he actually was the last one to defeat Sin. So Yuna's got a lot to live up to, and she's got at this point way too many guardians.
So let's talk about that original pilgrimage that you just talked about. With you had Aaron, you had what was it? High Lord Braska was Yuna's father. He was the summoner, right? The grand summoner kind of person.
Yep.
And then you also had another person, another guardian along named Jecht. And who was Jecht?
Well, Jecht happens to be Titus's father.
Oh my God!
Would you believe it?
Well, what a twist!
There is so many goddamn connections.
Jecht is an interesting character.
He is a very interesting character.
And if I remember correctly, I shared my opinion on Jecht during our Final Fantasy X episode. And he's kind of a jerk.
It wasn't glowing.
No, it wasn't glowing. No, he's kind of a jerk. He's a jerk face at the end of it. Like he is very, very gruff.
He is a lovable alcoholic mean man.
There is nothing lovable about Jecht at all. He is.
Titus's mum must have seen something in him.
Maybe it had maybe she was drunk too. I don't know. I mean, Jecht he is so mean. He was mean to Titus constantly. He gave Titus a complex throughout most of this thing. He was just, I mean, he's a very important character within the story. And I get that he went through and he was part of that original summoner pilgrimage along with Yuna's father and with Aaron. And it seems like, at least during that adventure, he might have been a little bit, I'll say, softer than what he had been with his own son. But it's just, man, Jecht was mean, man. I don't know.
Well, that was his pilgrimage changed him. That's the story of that's Jecht's story, mate. That's the prequel that never happened.
Well, then it needs to happen. I need to experience that more so I can feel better about Jecht than what I got.
Well, so that might be a bit of, because in the extra content as you go through, you get these little video recordings, for want of a better term, and it does show a little bit more of Jecht's story through these little videos. So you get a little bit of Oren as a younger man and Yuna's father, and it paints a bit of a picture as to Jecht's arc and his softening, but you might have got a couple, but yeah. Some of the hidden ones are a little bit more, add a little bit more meat to that bone.
All right, so you're almost convincing me now that I need to go back and
that he's a great guy and that you invite him to Christmas.
You know what? I am going to go back and I'm going to 100% the game just to see if you're actually telling the truth.
Do not bother. Just look it up on YouTube.
Okay, that's fair. I could do that too. But anyway, that goes into the whole concept of sin is not just a one-time thing. Sin comes back and comes back and comes back, and even if a certain pilgrimage and a certain summoner is successful, sin just continues to return. And it's one of those things where it's one of the pervasive themes throughout the entire game. And of course, this time everybody is hoping that things will be a little bit different. So like Isa was saying, you do continue on in your journey. And one of the things we should probably talk about is just general travel and traversal of environments, because this was one of the things, and like other things we've been talking about, this is something that came up during our Final Fantasy X episode. But movement and travel in this game is very linear until it's not. And there is a certain point in the story where that linearity goes away and you can explore much more broadly. But for a good chunk of the game, you're exploring forward. You're going forward. And the lands are really, really big. And trying to get across those different lands, especially the larger overworld areas, can sometimes take some time. But luckily, there is a creature available that can help.
I hate this, I hate this,
Oh,
I
come
hate
on.
this bloody song.
No. This is an awesome version of the Chocobo song. I mean, the Chocobo song has been in pretty much every single Final Fantasy. Maybe not everyone, but it's been in most of the Final Fantasies. And I have to say, this is one of my favorite renditions. The jazzy kind of beat, just the way it overall sounds, it just sounds happy. Now, in all fairness, I only spent maybe, 10 to 15 minutes max over the course of my entire playthrough actually riding on a Chocobo. So this song never got old to me. So I understand that might have been a different experience for you.
Man, if you want to get Titus's best weapon, you have to do this, for want of a better term, completely awful minigame with the Chocobo, where you've got to actually get negative time in this run. So
No,
you got to collect
wait a second.
balloons.
Negative time. How does
You
that
got to
even
get
work?
-0. So
That doesn't make
every
sense.
balloon, yeah, I know. Like you're running against the clock, and you got to collect these balloons that take 3 seconds off the clock. I think. Don't quote me on that. But there's also these seagulls that just come and it's like throwing wet fish at you, and it's like every time you get hit, you lose 2 seconds or whatever. And then and to add on top of that, you're actually racing against another computer opponent. It's the most infuriating minigame, and the it's not like the Chocobo riding minigame is good. It's like trying to like operate you can't even describe it. It's just slippery is not even the right word. It's just backwards, upside down, wet, slippery, awful controls. And you listen to this song on repeat 4 hours. It sucks. The song sucks. The minigame sucks. Don't repeat it.
This song, look, listen, just because you have a negative association with the song doesn't mean that the song itself is bad. I can
No,
appreciate.
I actually quite like the song's okay. The song's great, but don't ever play it ever again, please.
For anybody who might be wondering, as we were getting ready to record the episode, I did play this song once, and I heard ISO basically go into a stress-induced reaction when I played it. So he means it. He does not want to listen to this song ever again, I bet.
Every time it comes up on my random playlist, it's like I can't hit skip fast enough.
So putting that aside and those negative associations aside, which I do not have because I did not go for any of the, what are they, celestial weapons? Are those the best
celestial
weapons?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't go through the celestial weapon grind with anybody, but shortly after you first encounter the Chocobo, you actually meet another main character that's going to play a significant role throughout the rest of the story. That is Seymour. ISO, tell us a little bit about Seymour.
So Seymour is a little bit like, he is following in the footsteps of his father, who is the Guado is a race in this world. Again, there's a few different races in this, which we sort of alluded to the racism that Waka has and the prejudices. So they are held relatively well in the community. So Seymour's father was a high maester, I believe. So he was quite high in the religion, and Seymour has just recently taken up his position after his father had passed away after being in the position for a great number of years. So, and he is quite liked. He was, I believe, at the Luca game or something like that, and generally quite favourable, and seems to get on quite well with Una, which is much to the chagrin of Titus.
Yeah, Titus has kind of fallen for Yuna as you keep playing the game. It seems like they have a little bit of a budding relationship going on.
Who didn't see that coming?
It was a shock. It was a shock to
Yeah,
me. I don't know, but I'm
not that
usually
anybody
oblivious.
could love that man.
That's exactly. Well, look, I'm not saying that it's two-sided at this point. This might just be Titus being infatuated with Yuna. But no, you're right. Yuna does
Aggressively
actually.
loving at her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we meet Seymour, and seems like a good enough guy. You move through a couple of different areas. You're actually making your way at this point to a mega fight against a Sin Spawn. And one of the things that I wanted to mention was that I really appreciated the way that Final Fantasy X handled some of the bigger boss battles. Because for anybody who's played other Final Fantasy games, a lot of times you go into these big boss battles, at least up until this point, you go into these big boss battles and yeah, the creature might be larger than some of the enemies you face, or you might have different music that tries to show you just how important this battle is or just how epic this battle is going to be. But a lot of times those battles are still just against an enemy. It doesn't really take on any sort of different kind of feeling. The way Final Fantasy X does those battles, I thought was remarkable. They really created that feeling of a big action set piece. Some of them even have environmental interactions that happen and different cutscenes that get interspersed as the battle plays out. So you're going into these battles, and this is one of the first real big set piece kind of battles against one of the Sin Spawn. And I just thought they did a remarkable job just organizing the battle, making it feel like it was high stakes, and just the way it was composed visually and from an audio perspective. I thought they did an awesome job of making it feel like, yeah, this is actually, these are like world ending possibilities, and you absolutely have to succeed. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I just really thought the big battles in this game were probably better than many of the big battles that preceded it in the Final Fantasy series.
Oh, fantastic! Like the set pieces in this are really good, and I think really a crowning achievement for what they will do in the future and what they have done in the past. They've taken a lot of what worked from the earlier Final Fantasies, and they've added a lot of extra, yeah, cinematic value. And what I liked about this fight is they actually show their hand a little bit too, like because you actually get to control Seymour at a point who is significantly higher level than what you should be at this point. So he's got a few extra spells, so you get like that little taste of the cooler spells. Like, hey, come on, kids, this is the cool stuff. Here's the Thundaga. When you're still like rolling around with Lulu doing thunder and doing 2 damage, and he's
Right.
doing 9,000 damage. I like that little element of it, that little sprinkle of he's somebody to take, and having him on your side sort of gives you that little taste. I like that. And yeah, but as you say about the battles, like the build up to this one, some of the smaller characters that we haven't mentioned, that they get a little shining moment here. I don't think it's probably necessary to go completely into that, but they sort of weave the high stakes of the world into this quite well. So
Yeah, and that's a good point about hey, you got a little taste of what you could potentially grow into from a power perspective. That's a kind of trope in video games that I actually really enjoy. And Final Fantasy as a series has done that several times before, where they give you access to this very high level character early on in the game. and they kind of show you, look, this is what's waiting for you. And of course, they always decimate whatever enemies are in front of them in comparison to the paltry damage that you're currently doing with your party. And they're kind of like these savior kind of moments where you have these really high powered characters. But I love that kind of thing in games. And I think that it's a great way for developers and designers to keep you hooked, because you see this high level gameplay and you think to yourself, well, I can't wait until I get there. I can't wait until I can actually do that. And that's the kind of thing that I just really appreciate in pretty much any game that has some sort of power curve or leveling curve. It just makes you want to continue to play the game and want to continue to build out your characters. So we get past that big set piece battle, and then we eventually re-meet another character. We meet Riku.
So Riku's theme is probably one of my favorites in terms of I've sort of requested the piano version because my brother had this on an iPod, and I don't know how to tell you this, Tony. I'm a swinger.
Are you
A
really?
swinger in real life. I love going on like playground swings. Like when I was a
Oh, that
kid,
is a totally different. I had a really different
yeah,
perception.
yeah. No, it's it. I was trying to lead you on there a little bit, but I love going on swings, and even like until I was like well old enough not to be doing it, I'd just go to a park and I'd just sit on a swing and listen to music and just chill out. And one of the songs that I used to chill out to quite a lot was this piano recording session of all of the Final Fantasy X, and Riku's theme is just so beautiful. It's the way it cascades up and down. It reminds me a lot of Eric Satie's piano collection. It's beautiful stuff, and I just can't get it out of my head. And I think it's probably one of the strongest songs in the game. But what do you think about it? Do you like it?
Oh, I love the theme. Yeah, I absolutely love the theme. I think it sounds beautiful. The piano version in particular sounds outstanding. So I really do enjoy the theme itself. Riku as a character, I also really liked, but I also feel like I shortchanged her a little bit, because when I did my playthrough, she was not part of my main party for any length of time. I understand that she can actually become pretty darn powerful the more you play the game, or the more you build her up from an overall experience and skill perspective. But she's just one of those characters for whatever reason. And I think the reason for it actually is that as you get these new characters, as you're playing the game and you start to build up your party, they start from basically square zero or from stage zero. Like they don't have much, if any, skills when they join your party. Whereas you have the rest of your party that you've had for a much longer period of time, and they are much more well developed. So you almost have to go out of your way to level up some of the new characters as you get them. And like we were talking about before, traveling in this game is not all that easy until you get to a certain point in the game where it opens up and then you have access to a lot more areas. But when you get these lower level characters and you're in much higher level areas than what they should really be capable of dealing with, it just made it so that I didn't really focus on Riku. I only used Riku when there were the special robot enemies where if you stole from them, and I'm correct me if I'm misspeaking about this one, but I think if you steal something from them, that basically defeats them outright, if I'm remembering
Yeah,
correctly.
it's pretty much like a one-hit kill, and then
Yeah.
you get some extra items as well. So there's some that works into the rock paper scissors sort of, as you were saying about Waka being more effective against flying enemies. Like Riku's better against the Machina, which is the robot sort of enemy type in this game. So yeah, it's just an extra element to that. But yeah, I feel like she's sort of introduced at a point where you're already comfortable. Her skill set is unique in the sense that it's a thief, but it's sort of not quite useful enough to be outright better than what you've already got. And yeah, she sort of gets lost in the mix a little bit, which is a bit of a shame. Her character is interesting and does drive a lot of the story, but yeah, I think she was more impactful on my first playthrough because of her bubbly personality, but on subsequent playthroughs, it was I don't know. I think the mechanics to the character are sort of a little bit there's a misbalance there.
Yeah, that's kind of what I felt too. It was just, I didn't gravitate towards her from an actual playability perspective. I actually liked her personality. I liked when she was in the story. I liked all of that stuff. I just wasn't crazy about her from a gameplay perspective, other than in those limited situations where she shines. Or, as an example, if you're fighting somebody and you don't have the ability to use magic, and she could use her, and I can't remember the special ability, but she could use certain items where it could actually heal, like that kind of stuff. She was very useful in those kind of situations, but I just found her really situational in comparison to the other party members. So after we encounter Riku, we do go through a couple of additional areas in the game. We go across the Moonflow, we go to the city of Guadasalam, and then eventually we reach the Far Plane, which is actually a really critical part of the overall plot. This is going to tell us a little bit more about what happens and what summoners really are all about and what their overall journey really is trying to do. So we're going to look at that right now.
So, as the story progresses, we encounter the place called the Far Plane. So, the Far Plane is sort of this, for want of a better term, it's like a interactive heaven. So, you get to go and visit the people that you have lost. So, when Yuna performs ascending, the people that have been sent are sort of sent to this Far Plane. So if you'd lost, say, a brother or a mother or a sister or a loved one, you can go and visit. It's like going to a cemetery, but you actually get a vision of these people. The in-game lore sort of it's unclear whether this is actually them sort of living in this place or whether it's just feeding back off the memories. But it's a really interesting concept, and the way that they've left it a little bit murky, like whether and the different religions of the world sort of have different opinions. Like Riku doesn't even go in there because she just says the memories of loved ones stay with us. I gain nothing from going in there, and Oren also doesn't go in there. But as this sort of important moment, like encountering the fire plane is happening, there's also this big reveal that Seymour has actually asked to marry him. What are your thoughts on that, Tony?
I don't like it. I don't like it,
You don't
ISO.
like it?
I don't
You're
like
not
it.
you're not accepting
No, I don't. I
the
don't. I
invitation?
don't like it. It feels wrong to me. At this point, you're kind of getting not a great feeling about Seymour. I know Seymour up to this point has been portrayed as this good guy, this guy that people respect. He's certainly powerful from a summoner ability, but I don't know. I don't like the whole hey, marry me for well, really whatever reason. He doesn't know Yuna. They don't know each other.
They don't, but, again, this feeds back into the religion, like the famous summoners before Braska, there was a Unalesca, and I'm forgetting the other, but it's all about religion, and it's like this circle of repetition, like, it's a repeating circle, like, the the religion is feeding back into the cycle every time, like, sin is reborn, the church does, yeah, it's all a big circle and the world's sort of stuck in this loop, and that's a repeating theme in this game. And I didn't really chat about the song that sort of preceded this. I reckon this is one of the better this is one of my favorites as well. It's like a Blade Runner blues sort of this cool melancholy, it's sort of a lot of thought, and it's sort of used a lot in this game as like Titus will do a what do you call it? Like he'll do like a monologue over the top, and it just brings a lot of extra weight to his monologue.
Yeah, and I will say that while I may not have liked the prearranged marriage, so to speak, situation that Seymour was proposing, I do appreciate that everything, and you mentioned this earlier, everything that happens in the game has a reason. There's a reason why something's happening. It's not like any of these story beats or anything that's occurring from a narrative perspective. Nothing really comes out of left field. It's all incredibly well thought out. And this narrative, the overall story for Final Fantasy X, I would put up there with pretty much any kind of fantasy storyline. Doesn't matter whether you're talking film or television or video games. This is a very deep narrative, and you could play the game and just scratch the surface and kind of go through and play it the way you would maybe other RPGs where you're paying attention to the narrative, but you're not necessarily paying attention to the background lore of the game. But I got to tell you, there's so much there. There's so much lore there to potentially explore that it's something that I really think sets it apart from a lot of other games, is just that level of detail. And I'm loving how you're just dropping in some of these additional lore elements, and some of them I will readily admit I didn't even fully pick up on, or at least not to any great depth during my playthrough. So I appreciate you bringing a little bit more of that background lore to the forefront, because I think that is one of the aspects of the game that really does make it feel more cohesive and deeper than what a lot of other games that we might have played over the years.
Oh, it's quite interesting. Like even the science of the firefly, they've gone into like all this little nuance about the little like the way the fireflies, the witches sparkles that come out when you defeat a fiend. That's actually part of the story. Like because you'll notice that and you go, oh, that's a cool effect when you kill a fiend. Yeah, they're the fireflies, which is the essence of what unit's sending. So it's yeah, there's a beautiful little parts of extra knowledge that yeah, as you say, you probably won't see on the first playthrough, and if you want to go through for a second or even read more into it, it's there for you.
Which I think is awesome. I think that I love games that are deeper than they first appear. And Final Fantasy X is definitely one of those kind of games. As we move on beyond the far plane, we do eventually get to a new area of the world known as the Macalania Forest. And this is actually going to be an area where several new plot points and major plot points unveil themselves. So let's talk about that in just a minute. Like I was mentioning, Macalania Forest and this whole area around this section of the game is where several major plot points will occur. And we should talk through each of them just to give a sense of what we're experiencing as we get to this point of the game. For one, we learn that Riku is actually of Albed heritage. That is the race that, like we talked about earlier, Waka does not like. There is a lot of negative connotation around the Albed, whether that is correct or not. There's certain assumptions around their use of technology and what that means within the overall context of the game world. Waka has always believed them to be evil. This evil race of beings who basically caused the destruction or could cause the destruction of the world. And now he's starting to question some things because now a trusted party member, or who had been a trusted party member, Riku, now says, hey, look, I'm actually part of this race. And Waka, he's not taking it so well. He doesn't know exactly what to believe, at least at this point. Perhaps more importantly, though, given where we are in the story, is that we finally learn conclusively that Seymour isn't quite as righteous and good as what he has appeared at first glance. And in fact,
He's a bad man.
He's a bad man. He is a very bad man. He's killed his father. He has very nefarious plans and ambitions. Effectively, what he wants to do, and we talked about the fact he's this very powerful summoner, what he wants to ultimately do is effectively become the final Aeon and take Sin's place. He wants to become the overall destructive force, this all-powerful force. Now, of course, we can't allow that to happen, but that is his overall ambition. And everything that he's been doing everything that he has been trying to do over the course of the game so far, even if it seemed altruistic, this is all in support of him trying to become this all-powerful being. And certainly we will need to stop him, but at this point, Seymour does become one of the main antagonists in the entire game, and we'll continue to have to go against Seymour and work through the different things that pop up. We actually will fight Seymour multiple times throughout the rest of the
like
game.
7 times.
Yeah, it's a lot. I will say that.
Why doesn't somebody send him? It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. Yuna's right there. I mean, well, but Seymour sticks around. He definitely is one. He's like an Energizer bunny. He keeps on ticking, and he just keeps on going. And then finally, the final major plot point, and this has been teased throughout the game, we realize finally that Titus and Yuna have been through quite a bit by this point. They've been through battles. They've been through all sorts of situations. They've been through dangers.
They've laughed at a cliff together.
They've left. Ha ha ha. Oh, I can't. Oh my God. Yes, they've done tons of things together. They now realize that they are finally truly in love. Like we mentioned, Titus and Yuna are in fact in love, and we've seen that relationship build over the course of the game. And I know we teased about it a little bit, but the fact of the matter is the overall relationship was actually handled pretty darn well from an overall plot and pacing perspective. I appreciated how Titus and Yuna eventually did come together. And the fact is, even if you look beyond Titus and Yuna and we look at the rest of the party, one of the things that I really enjoyed about the way Final Fantasy X was set up is just the way the party works together, the way the different personalities gel, the way the different conflicts occur, because things aren't all roses within this party. It's not like everybody is completely on the same page. Every single character has a backstory, and you do explore the majority of those backstories as you play the game, whether you're talking about Titus, or Yuna, or Aaron, or Lulu, or Kamari, or Waka, everybody, or Riku, everybody that you encounter that's part of your party, you will learn more about their own motivations, you'll learn more about their own history and lore, and why they are the way they are within the game world. And pretty much every single character, and I can't think of anybody who doesn't, but every character goes through their own personal story arc, which I think was absolutely awesome to look at. And even though this wasn't one of those Final Fantasies with 20 plus characters you could potentially recruit, I think what that did was allow the development team to spend more time fleshing out the stories and backstories around each of the characters that you did have. Does that kind of, when you played the game, ISO, and I know you've played it even more than I have, is that kind of the way you felt as you learned more about each of the individual characters and how they all meshed together into this cohesive unit?
Oh, definitely. Like, I really like the Titus and Yuna, like the yin and the yang sort of story that they've built here, because as we sort of get close towards the end of the story, it actually flips a little bit. Like, you've got Yuna that's taking on this journey, and we haven't really revealed everything yet, but there's a sort of ultimate sacrifice that she's going to need to make, and then she's sort of having to come to grips with the fact that she is throwing her life away almost, like, spoiler alert. And then that sort of flips at some point, you've got, and then Titus might be, it's a bit of a backwards and forwards, but that loop is sort of coming back again, repeating circles. You've got this interesting thing with Lulu that it's in the background and it's quite light in terms of the story, but she's actually been part of a pilgrimage before, and her trusted summoner had died. They just didn't make it. They didn't get any further than a certain point in the story, and that's it, sort of explored, but it's not explored. It's there if you want to go into it. Kamari's got a lot of sort of issues. We haven't spoken about Kamari much, but he's a really interesting character in himself. He's lost his horn. He's a Ronso, which is another race, and that's sort of his power's been taken away by that lack of horn, and that's sort of another story beat that we'll come up to. But it's beautiful, like the little ways that they weave them in, and everybody's connected but not connected, and it's great. I really like it.
I think it also speaks to the depth of the world building in general. Like you mentioned, Kamari is yet another race that inhabits this world. And it really feels like there is a dynamic at play across the entirety of the game, that it's not just this straightforward, just progress from one set to the other kind of thing. There is a lot of intentionality here, and I think that all of the different, whether you're talking about the political kinds of situations that are happening, or the different races and their own beliefs and customs and how that all plays out, you can really dive as deeply as you want to into each of these areas, and it all feels like it's been fleshed out. Nothing really feels shortchanged here at all. Even when you're talking about, even beyond the main characters, when you talk about some of the side characters, and like you were talking about earlier, the religions and the different players that have been part of those religions over the course of history, everything has meat on the bone, and it feels really cool, especially if you're somebody who enjoys experiencing and learning more about that lore and background and all that kind of stuff. It really lends something extra to the game that makes it feel even better to play. But moving on, after we learn that Titus and Yuna have finally let themselves know that they are in fact in love, Titus learns about the true fate of a summoner, and this might put a wrinkle into their future plans.
So at this point in the story, we've had a few jumps. So the party's been broken up a couple of times due to different plot points. We've had this fight with Seymour. We've been discommunicated from the church. Everybody sort of hates us now because we've fought and killed Seymour, and the party sort of broken up, rejoined. We've gone to Riku's home, which is in Bicknell Island, and we've met the Albed, and we've found a lot more connections in terms of Yuna's family and Riku's family. But in this mess, we've lost Yuna. She's been captured by Seymour Guado, and the wedding is happening despite Tony's.
I object. If I were in the audience and they say "Speak now, or forever hold your peace," I'd be standing up and I'd be speaking now.
Well, the team does in fact do that by assaulting the wedding.
It's a very direct objection.
Is it? They literally. This is a cool sequence too, where like it makes absolutely no physical sense. Like this whole thing makes absolutely no sense. The wedding is a complete shambles. The catering is not getting rehired, so they've jumped out of a plane into this wedding, shot up everybody. The whole story sort of falls apart here. Though. I just ignore this part of the story because like there's a whole lot of don't shoot my friends or jump off a building. It's like, oh, okay, what? It didn't make no sense. But anyway, the wedding gets cancelled. Yuna jumps off a building. The end.
That's an awesome It's an awesome summary. So we're done here, right? No.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up. Wrap it up, guys. All done. Wedding
But
done.
but no, I mean the fact of the matter is that there's kind of a lot that happens, and I would agree that there's certain story elements here where it's almost like they kind of wave their hands and it's like just go with it kind of thing, as opposed to
Yeah.
looking a little bit more deeper into it.
This is probably where a lot of this bit is a little bit silly, but you can get away with it because it is so dramatic and there's a lot going on that's very cinematic. The song really captures that. It's like, this is happening, we're doing stuff that's really pushing the story forward. Doesn't necessarily matter a little bit. There's a little bit of silliness, and this sort of pushes the story into where it's sort of finally going to go. So the wedding's being cancelled now that Yuna's jumped off the building. She's gone to Bevel to get one of the Aeons that's here, and we're going to continue on with our story once we've got this Aeon.
Yeah, and the next part, one of the next critical elements is what happens next, because something we didn't touch on, and you kind of gave a little bit of a hint around this, but being a summoner and actually getting to Sin and being quote unquote successful isn't necessarily all it's shapes up to, or all it's meant to be, at least for the summoner, because what we do learn, or what we've learned, is that to actually do that, to get to that point, to defeat Sin requires, as you mentioned earlier, the ultimate sacrifice for the summoner. They actually have to go and they have to sacrifice themselves in order to defeat Sin.
Well, if we go a little bit further, they actually also need to sacrifice one of their guardians to get the final Aeon, which is an element of the story which is integral. So when Baraska did his pilgrimage, this is sort of getting into major spoilers, so if you haven't beaten the game at this point, maybe beat it, then come back from this point. I'm not sure if I'm speaking too out of turn here, Tony, but...
No, this is good. No, this was meant to be, so hopefully everybody is aware of this by now, but we were effectively going through the majority of the story here. So if to your point, if anybody has not beaten the game yet, this is well beyond the point of no return, but this is like legitimately the point of no return, because there are going to be some major spoilers coming up. So no, I think
I'm going to start spoiling stuff now. So essentially when Baraska did his pilgrimage, Jekt actually became the final Aeon. So he had sacrificed himself, Auron, and then Baraska continued on to defeat Sin, and Baraska sacrificed himself. So essentially the only one that came out of this pilgrimage was Auron. And we find out that he was not too happy because he was not told that this was all going to happen either. So he goes back and confronts Unalesca, which is one of the temples where you make this ultimate sacrifice at the altar, essentially, to take one of your guardians and become the final guardian, the final Aeon. And he fights Unalesca, and he doesn't do very well.
In all fairness, Unalesca is pretty darn powerful. She wrecked me for the longest time, because you do eventually fight Unalesca, and she absolutely decimated me and my party when I fought her. There are the status effects. We talked a lot about status effects during the main Final Fantasy X episode, but it bears repeating. There are some fights that rely so heavily on status effects that it makes it so that you almost have to have the right accessories, the right items, the right spells to negate or to at least mitigate those status effects, because without them, you stand almost no chance of surviving.
Yep, stone pretty much is a one-hit kill, so you need to prepare to alleviate that status effect if you haven't got a sort of option for that. There are ways to do it, but yeah, it makes your work a lot harder.
So after, and I know we kind of jumped around a little bit, but after Yuna effectively says, yep, I'm going to go, I'm going to do what I need to do, I'm going to do my duty, and Tidus kind of coming to grips with that, we actually learned something a little bit more about what's going on here and what Tidus's origins actually are.
Bwah. Are we all ready for the Inception time?
There's
Bwah.
another one of those sound
This
effects that you're famous for.
the Foley artist is coming
Yes.
out in me again. This is where the story of Final Fantasy X gets a little bit more complicated. Like we've sort of alluded to the fact that we've got a lot of circles and circles, we've got a lot of religious themes and a lot of other things going on in the background. So this is where the story sort of takes sort of a left turn in terms of we've sort of had these confusing elements of where Titus is from and how he fits into this world and whether he's in a false world or whether his world was real or vice versa. You know, it's been played out throughout the story. We find out in Mount Gagazet, where the last song was from, that the faith, the Aeons, they are dreaming, and they are dreaming Titus.
So Titus doesn't really exist?
Not really. So you can't hate him anymore. He's just a figment of your imagination.
He's a really bad figment of my. No, I'm just teasing.
He's a nightmare of your
okay.
imagination.
That makes more sense.
So essentially, the world that both Jekt and Titus are from, they've been projected, for want of a better term. They have been projected by the Aeons. Whether this is because they have been projected by the Aeons to end this cycle, that's what we're not 100% sure of. The Aeons are tired. They've been doing this for hundreds of years at this point. They've been continuing this dream, keeping the world of Xanarkand alive. It gets quite deep, and I would encourage anybody that's interested in this to sort of either play it for themselves or sort of read more into it. Mainly because it's quite complicated and I can't remember all of it. But
that makes two of us.
Yeah, it's a dream world that's been created, and essentially all you need to know is that Titus and Jekt were a figment of that world. Essentially, it's a real place that's been created thousands of in a distant area of the world of Spira, but it's being generated by these Aeons that are and faith that are tired and they want this cycle to end. So as we get further and into the story, you've got this really complex narrative, and it's quite interesting. Like it's easy to sort of discount, oh, that's all just baloney, but it is quite interesting. And yeah, this is where the agency is sort of changing a little bit. Where the now Titus is now sort of a little bit more in the driver's seat than Una. Una sort of been in the driver's seat, and now Titus is sort of more in charge of the story. Did you feel that shift happen at this point?
I
Tony,
did,
or?
yeah, and I think the reason for that is that Titus suddenly becomes a much more interesting character, at least in my opinion, at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
Because up to this point, and this is what, 35, 40 hours into the game, something like that.
Depending on how much time you've pissed up the wall.
I guess that's true. It's going to be highly dependent, but
I've pissed a lot of time up the wall.
I'm sure you did. But for a more, I'll say, straightforward playthrough, this is probably a good 40-ish hours into the game. And suddenly everything that you believed kind of gets turned on its side. And I know that for me, because I had no idea that this twist was coming, for me, as I'm playing the game, I assumed that Titus had somehow gotten, I guess, transported. It was a little fuzzy as far as whether he was transported ahead in time or behind in time. And it kind of felt weird because whenever they talk about Xanarkand, which was Titus's hometown, they always talk about the ruins of Xanarkand. And it's like, well, wait a second. But at the very beginning of the game, where that original Blitzball competition takes place, while that heavy metal theme is going, that's Xanarkand. And it's very much looks very modern to me. And Spira, as an overall civilization, looks kind of less modern. It seems like but then you get into the whole concept of the machines and the Albed and the Machina and how that was used and now is not used over time.
Forsaken now, and
yeah. So it's kind of one of those things that this was definitely the part in the game that for me, Titus became much more interesting because it was just such a dramatic twist that I didn't expect at all. And it immediately made the character and the overall narrative seem a little bit more compelling. Not that it wasn't already compelling, but this is one of those things where, yeah, it kind of comes out of left field a little bit, but at the same time, it kind of works. It's
Well, it's
one
been
of
telegraphed. It's not
yeah.
out of left field in like you've had these highlights and flashbacks and well, flash sideways, all sorts of different things that you're not 100% sure what they are, but they're being telegraphed to you, so it's not completely out of place when this story element is introduced, but it's also yeah, it's an interesting plot point, and I think it makes it a little bit more interesting, but it does complicate the story, and that's where I think a lot of people have either been compelled to drive forward with the story or leave the story as it is. Because I actually found when I first played this, I don't remember a lot of this because it does get quite complicated at this point. The story has been quite narrative. You've got the branching of you've gained more access to the world, and then you've also got this expansion of the story all at the same time. So it can be quite overwhelming.
I could totally see that. I could see where that would be the case because it is definitely, this is right around the time where you do get much more broad access to pretty much the entire game world. You can choose to do what you want to do, whether that's continuing on with the narrative directly or doing some of the side content and bonus kinds of things that will most likely prepare you even better for the eventual end of the game, but also provide a whole lot of additional content and lore that you could potentially get. So I think that's definitely valid. And I would say that for me, when I encountered this one, while it did seem, well, it did seem definitely interesting. It was interesting in a good way. You know how sometimes you have these kind of elements that just pop in, and I know it was telegraphed, but you didn't really know where that telegraphing was going. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
there was, you knew something was going on. You had, at least I had some theories about what was happening. And then sometimes when a game or a movie or whatever, they give you the reveal and it's like, this is what's been going on the whole time. This is the reason behind whatever. Sometimes it hits and sometimes it misses. This one for me was a hit, even though it felt a little weird and I kind of had to turn my brain sideways a little bit to truly get the whole, hey, this is, he's basically been willed. Titus has basically been willed into existence as a dream. It made me curious. Well, what does that mean from what's going to happen to him? Let's say this whole thing is successful. Does he legitimately disappear? Who the heck knows? I mean, certainly we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit, but it was definitely one of those things where I wanted to know what happened next. It was almost like a mini cliffhanger, like, ooh, now I get it. Now I understand much more about what's happening across the world, what I've seen at different points. Now I want to see how the whole thing resolves itself. That was how that reveal left me as I was playing through the game. And then, speaking of playing through the game, we then move on. And we're going to put aside the side content because we're not going to go too much into that level of detail, but we are going to basically march on towards the end of the game, which means a lot more fights. And of course, yet another fight with Seymour. like we had mentioned before, you will actually fight Seymour, who is that very high powered summoner who has grand ambitions to effectively take Sin's place. You're going to fight him a bunch throughout the game. Eventually, you do fight him in what is effectively a final battle kind of scenario with Seymour. And for anybody who has played Final Fantasy X and devoured it and has a deep understanding of all of the lore and story beats and have played the game multiple times, you'll probably recognize at this point that we've jumped around a little bit. Part of that is intentional because we didn't
stuffed it up.
we kind of messed it up. No, I'm going to say, listen. Part of it was we said up front that we weren't going to touch every single plot point. The other aspect of it is we kind of messed up a little bit, but we recognize that, or I should say more accurately, ISO recognizes that, and he, like I mentioned, has much more playtime in Final Fantasy X than I have, and he said that he can conclusively tie everything together that we've missed. So no pressure.
I didn't say that. I didn't say I could summarize the whole thing.
He may not have said that, but we're going to see what happens.
He's going to give it a go. He's going to give it a red hot go.
So give it a go. Well, what are we doing here at this part of the story, and what did we miss?
Didn't I try to end it when she threw herself off the wedding?
You did. You tried.
You tried. So anyway, at this point, we've jumped onto Sin. We've found a way to soothe Sin with some beautiful hymns of the faith, and we've essentially fired air cannons at it and jumped on it. A bit like the wedding, we've just crashed into it, and we here to shoot first, ask questions later. But of course, Seymour has found a way to. His ultimate goal is to become Sin and rebirth. He wants to be the all powerful. Is sort of the god complex. It's I think it's probably the weaker part of his story. Like this sort of his lust for power, it sort of overwhelms him. Sort of there are a bit more threads there with you'll find a bit more about his mother and stuff like that, which we haven't gone into here just based on time restraints. But he won't quit, and we've got another fight. But I love this song particularly because I'd played this game, and at this point you're in the end game, so you've done all the side content. I've sort of been playing around with this game for 135 hours, admittedly not very time effectively, but this song comes out of nowhere. Like, I thought I'd heard everything 900 times, and then this song is like about the only time it's played. Fantastic. There's a couple of songs like that, but they've used them very sparingly. And this one is just, whoa, it's like the Kefka song from Final Fantasy VI. Would you agree with that, Tony? Sort of a bit like the Kefka song?
Oh, yeah, definitely. This is definitely a Dancing Mad kind of situation.
Yeah, definitely got that vibe.
Yeah.
You know, it's got that same sort of energy. It's like it's sort of cool. I like it. And it's the high energy, and it's sort of the one song out of all of these that I've been on repeat. It's like it's a great little sort of energizer, good workout song, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But in this reveal, there is a deeper power, even deeper than Seymour. So the actual bad guy of this game is Yu Yevon.
Who the heck's Yu Yevon?
It's it's off the coast of England, isn't it?
Oh, that's where it was.
Yeah. But he is like the cycle repeating. He is the part of this religion, the manifest of the cycle repeating, and he's what ultimately causes him to be reborn. It's like an infectious disease that sort of captures the final aeon, a last ditch attempt to keep going on. There's a reason that the sin is reborn after a couple of years. It sort of comes back again. That's my understanding of it. Again, this is sort of complicated, but it's an interesting sort of element because as you beat Seymour and then continue into the chambers of sin, where you're going inside sin, you actually get to meet an old friend. Well, my old friend Jecht.
What?
Yeah. Can you play this? You know how this goes, don't you?
I do know how this goes, and this is So,
One
funnily
of my
enough,
favorite lines in the game where we haven't
horrible.
talked
This is
about
so bad.
favorite lines in the game.
This this
Jack
is
has this big monologue about, "It's good to see you, son. You really." I can't remember the lines, but essentially it's a big monologue about how he's done all this stuff and he's happy, not happy, but like the conflict has sort of been brought back up again. And then what's Titus's response to that?
all he says is,
Hey,
"Hey, I hit you." It's
hey.
horrible. It is the most anticlimactic thing. And it's like, what? What just happened? I mean, I know we talked about the voice acting before when we had our main episode, but this exchange for me is kind of it is the shining example of like what the heck. And I'm sure that the reason for that is because like we had talked about the animations and the syncing, the lip sync animations and the actual audio for the English translation had to be fit. So it wasn't like the development team went back and they redid all of that lip syncing. But so I'm sure I know that's probably the technical reason why they shortchanged this exchange. But man, was it an anticlimax. It was like,
I
what?
still find that hard to believe that there would have been like a one word definition that could have summed up a response to
Right?
such a long monologue. It's like makes absolutely no sense.
It feels like a miss. It definitely feels like a
Yeah.
miss here.
And it takes you out of that moment, which is I would have preferred nothing had been said. He just sort of stood there with his mouth open or something, like
It would have been more powerful. You're right. That would have been
yeah,
it actually would have been a really powerful moment if it was just
would have been
silence.
like defying speaking to your
Right.
father again.
Exactly.
The
And it's
act of
like,
defiance.
yeah,
But no,
exactly.
hi, hi. And he says it like that too, like oh hi.
I
Like you
know.
just bumped into some guy at the shop. Hi.
Oh
So you
my.
run into your dad at the shops, and
Right.
and then you've proceeded to beat the living snot out of him, and that's pretty much where we get to the next song. I think this is where I take or leave the fight with Jack. I think I think at this point I was too overpowered, so I didn't actually play the mechanics of it, like because I was just sort of hitting him, and that would have been it. So I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts on the actual battles with Seymour and Jet were like for you.
The Seymour fight was not too bad. The Jekt fight took me a couple of tries, if I'm remembering correctly, because I was definitely not overpowered by the time that I got to the end game. I would say that the Jekt fight was the last difficult fight because the fights that follow, for whatever reason, seemed a little bit less challenging. And certainly the final fight isn't even really a challenge to begin with. It's kind of more of a cinematic
Yeah,
ending.
yeah,
But I would say that there was some pretty good challenge with the Jekt fight. The Seymour fight, I don't think I beat it first try. I think I maybe beat it second try. So it wasn't too crazy. Honestly, none of them were as bad for me as Unalesca. Unalesca
yeah. You're
was
left man.
she was a beast. And I don't know, that was the hardest fight in the game. I had to have gone through that one. It had to be almost 10 times to try to beat her because of the status
Yeah, it's the
ailments.
pattern that's different. Yeah, once you learn the pattern and how the status effects work, and she's got like a regimented sort of set of operations. So once you sort of work that out, it's not too, yeah, well, it's beatable, but yeah, it is quite complicated. Well, more difficult than some of the other fights in the game. So
And my problem was that what I didn't realize that being, what is it, zombie? Was that the effect? I didn't realize that
yeah,
protected you from her ultra kill death ray thing.
yeah,
So
you don't want to get rid of it at some
exactly.
points. So yeah, you
And
got to learn the
I was playing it
when to
for
get rid of it, when not to.
yeah, I was playing it and I was like, oh, I don't want that status effect because I want to be able to heal myself normally and all that kind of stuff. So I would get rid of zombie and then she'd follow it up with the, hey, I'm going to destroy your entire party. And then it
Insta
just
kill, yeah.
did not work. So once I figured that out, then it wasn't too bad. But that was probably the toughest fight that I had in the game. But getting back to Jekt, is all right, not bad. The cool thing though, I will say that something I found really cool is that that fight's theme is actually that heavy metal theme that we had
Yeah,
heard at
it's cool. Yeah,
the very first
which again
Blitzball.
is used at no other point in the game.
Exactly. So it's almost like an implied full circle moment kind of thing where it ties it together to the very beginning of the game. And Jecht himself was a very famous blitzball player and all that kind of stuff. And beyond the fact that there's some ties from a story perspective there, that song works really well as a battle song.
Cool, isn't it?
It is.
Cool.
I really like
Yeah.
that one.
It's memorable and yeah, it works well. But as we beat Jecht and we sort of move on, I think it's quite poetic. So at a certain point in the story, the faith have sort of said to Yuno and Titus, I believe, is in the room as well, that you need to call on us at the final battle. So at this point, we summon our Aeons and we're actually going systematically destroying them. So what's that sort of happening is Yevon is infecting our Aeons. So it's sort of taking our Aeons and then we're defeating them and we're sort of taking the Aeons out of the playing field, sort of, so to speak. So those Aeons that you've sort of built, I know I did when I was 15. I built an attachment to these characters. So it's different to the summons of Final Fantasy VII. They're not like a cutscene. They're actually a physical player on the field. They've got their own life bar. They've got their own menu. They've got their own attacks. So actually playing with them and then to take them and then defeat them, I thought it was quite poetic.
Now, a question, because I only had the Aeons that you were required to get from a story perspective. If you got the additional ones like Yojimbo and whatever else, do you actually battle them as well?
You go through and you beat all of them.
Okay, that's really cool.
Anima and the Magnus sisters or whatever they are, they all come back, and that sort of plays into it too. Because if you've leveled them, you've made a rod for your own back in certain instances,
Right?
Because they've got their own status. You can pump status points into them as well, so you can make them stronger. So you've actually, you've made more work than you necessarily needed to. So
interesting. But that is a cool final battle. I mean, well, I guess
it
it's
is
not
cool.
The final battle, but that is the cool penultimate battle.
That's the cool part of it, yeah. And then the actual final fight is, again, I'm not trying to, because I've done a lot of the side content and then came back to this. So by any means saying that I'm any good at this game, I just spent a lot of time doing it. It's all about just pissing time up the wall, essentially. It's just so at this point I was just so over leveled that these fights were fairly trivial, which I guess takes a little bit of that away, but it's still quite impactful from a story perspective. But yeah, the final battle, I think there's some elements with like a regeneration and some other like it's like some pillars or something like that sort of play into the final battle, but it's nowhere near as difficult as Yunalesca or something like that.
Yeah, and that very final battle. So once again, I was not overpowered going into that battle, but I don't know that there is unless you really mess something up, I don't know that there's really a way for you to truly die during that battle. I mean, I guess you could, but it seemed like all you had to do was make sure you paid attention and you were going to win eventually. It took me a while. I will admit that the final battle I guess it was against you, Yevon, directly. Is that right?
Yeah, like the little spider bug thing.
Yeah. So that final battle, it took a while because
it's a tick because it's like a parasite. That sort of makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That does make sense actually.
See, it all ties back into itself.
It does, which is awesome. But yeah, that final battle took a little bit of time, but it was not difficult. It was kind of like just a battle that tested a little bit more of your stamina versus anything that was crazy. It wasn't like there were any crazy status effects that went flying around. Never really felt in danger. But the battle itself, and the fact is that being the final battle in the game, it was actually a very cinematic and fitting conclusion to the game, because it was, by that point, you have experienced so much, you've done so many different fights and set pieces and all that kind of stuff, and this was the culminating or the culmination of that whole experience. And I thought it was fitting. And then, of course, assuming you do actually beat that boss, it goes right into the end game. And I am going to tell you right now, ISO and everybody, I got a little emotional. I legitimately got emotional as the final cutscene played with Yuna and Titus. And Titus, like we were talking about, Titus is really a dream. And now that there's no reason for that dream to persist, Titus goes away. And even though when
you came to love him, didn't
I
you?
did, I came to love him. I loved all the characters at the end of the day. And even though I thought that the voice acting could occasionally be really not all that great, the story, the relationships, the connections. I mean, and then with Aaron finally being able to be at peace and go the whole thing. I got legitimately emotional at the end of the game. And as I think back to it even today, which is now many months removed from my playthrough, I still feel a little emotional talking about it. There was a lot that happened throughout the game, and the way that the game ended for me was just, it worked. It worked in every capacity. And it even heightened the rest of the game. That's how good the ending was. And it made me think back. And even though I teased before about Titus being a whiny little bitch, you know what? I was okay. At the end of the day, he grew on me, and I did appreciate him for what he was. I appreciated all the characters and the story itself. Final Fantasy X was an amazing, amazing experience. I truly appreciate that you sponsored the episode, because I don't know that I would have really gone back to it. I had such weird preconceived notions based on my own childhood lack of playthrough because of the voice acting and me wanting to act out the scenes myself, that I don't know that I would have set aside the time to do it. But now that I have, I can honestly say Final Fantasy X, it's a classic. It's a classic for a reason.
Fantastic. See, that's the message to all the kids out there. Make your own podcast and you'll be forced to play games that you didn't think would be any good. And about 1 out of 10 would probably be pretty good.
That's the moral of the story. That is the moral of the story.
That's what Titus was trying to teach us all along.
Oh, wow. You just tied everything together with a nice little bow. That was awesome.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
No, I did enjoy the ending, and yeah, I think I said it in the episode, but yeah, I was a bit teary about it. You know, it's good, but because I started playing it and never finished it, and I pretty much gotten to the fighting the Aeon, so I literally only had like 2 battles,
which is still crazy. That is still crazy to me that you walked away literally right at the end.
Well, I wanted to go back and finish the other content, which is why I sort of did it this time, to fulfill that dream, to get the most out of the content, you know?
Yep.
But, you know, it's definitely an epic, and we've been, for the better part of the year almost, you know, playing or talking about this or listening to the music. So it's amazing the longevity this sort of game has. I think it's just a testament to the Final Fantasy series in general, you know. And you'll even you'll find, like, even you were saying earlier, 6 is your favorite. You know, everybody, even the Discord, we're constantly having arguments and battles and sort of conversations about. It's probably the topic that gets brought up the most. A new member will join. What's your favorite Final Fantasy?
Right.
And then film kids there defending Final Fantasy 13. The only person I know in the world that'll defend Final Fantasy 13.
Yep. Yeah, it's you're absolutely right, and that is kind of Final Fantasy in a nutshell. I mean, it has been a consistently high performing series. Everybody has their own favorites for whatever reason, and it is a true classic series. Even the modern releases, whether you love them or you don't love them, they're still part of that overall heritage, and I think that it's absolutely awesome. And probably more so than many other game franchises, Final Fantasy has truly stood the test of time. And it is just one of those things that is it's a part of, if you're a gamer, most likely, at a minimum, you know what Final Fantasy is. But I'd venture a guess that most people have at least dabbled with Final Fantasy. Even if it's not your cup of tea, you know what it is, and you probably have at least some awareness of Final Fantasy. And Final Fantasy X, certainly, I'm not ready to rank my Final Fantasies other than the ones that I have played. And I mean, Final Fantasy VI, I have not gone back to play since I was a kid. So I'm going based on nostalgia on that one. That one still, I think, holds its top spot. But Final Fantasy X, it's a pretty darn good game. I got to give it to you, ISO. It was a really good selection.
See, now somebody's just got to sponsor 6, and then he'll remember that it's an awful game, and 10 will be the favorite.
No. It can't possibly be. That would wreck me. That would wreck.
No, that'll break your heart.
It would literally break my heart. But as we draw our Sounds of the Classics episode on Final Fantasy X to a close, I want to personally thank ISO for taking the time to join me on this journey. We've been talking, like he said, we've been talking about Final Fantasy X in some capacity for months at this point, and I really appreciate him taking the time. If you couldn't tell by his accent, he is Australian, which means that this recording time is really not conducive to his sleep schedule. So I appreciate you taking the time to...
Currently hitting 3:20 a.m. now.
That's a little late in the day for...
That's early, really.
Or early, yeah. It depends on how you look at it. But I do appreciate you taking the time, ISO, to join us.
No, I'm forever indebted to you and the Discord community and the community you've built around this podcast. It's means an awful lot to me, and I really enjoyed doing this. Actually, it's a little project that I got to finish this game, and I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed doing this. It's fun. Everybody should start a podcast, guys.
There you go. Well, thanks again, ISO. And, for everybody, as we've talked about before, music has the power to transport you to faraway lands, to immerse you in experiences more than you ever thought possible, and enhance the games that we all know and love. While music is a core component of just about every gaming genre, the venerable RPG is perhaps more than most styles of game known for the awesomeness of its music. And nowhere is that more evident than with Final Fantasy X, a game whose soundtrack and story transcends the game it belongs to become something more, which is, quite simply, a true classic. That was our Sounds of the Classics episode focused on Final Fantasy X. I hope you all enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed creating it. If you'd like to reach out, let me know how I'm doing, provide feedback, comments, suggestions, or just talk about classic games and technology in general. I would love to hear from you, and there are a few ways you can reach out. I have an X account with the handle @ClassicGamingT. I have an email address, which is classicgamingtoday@gmail.com, and we have our Discord server. The link is in the show notes. Discord is the best way to get in touch with me and the rest of the community around this podcast. We have a ton of fun out on Discord. I highly encourage you all to check it out. I also highly encourage you to check out our Patreon. It is patreon.com/ClassicGamingToday. If you want even more Classic Gaming Today goodness, including a Patreon-exclusive bi-weekly podcast expansion pack, patreon.com/ClassicGamingToday is where it's at. Before we sign off for the week, I do want to mention that our next episode is going to be focused on A Nightmare on Elm Street for the Nintendo Entertainment System. So definitely write in if you have any particular feedback about that game and get your comments featured on the show. At the same time, I recognize you're likely listening to this podcast on any number of podcast services, and if you would feel so inclined, it would be great if you could leave me a review. This is not about trying to bolster star counts. This is not about trying to harvest a ton of 5-star ratings, though if that happens, awesome, it means we're doing something right. No, what it's really all about is trying to deliver the best possible podcast I can. The only way to do that is to get feedback from all of you, the listener community, to make sure I'm hitting the mark and delivering the content you all want to listen to. We get new listeners every single day, which is simply amazing. I want to continue to grow this community and continue to make the best possible podcast I can. We'll be back in around a week with our next episode focused on A Nightmare on Elm Street. Until then, remember, sometimes the games of the past are just as good, if not better, than the games of today. Goodbye, everyone.